Be honest, when was the last time you were truly amazed by something small? Not because it was important, but because it made your heart flutter. Maybe you haven't been curious for a very long time, have you? The forgotten spark. There was a time when a puddle looked like an ocean, and a cardboard box could become a spaceship. Back then, your mind didn't need a reason to wonder, it simply did. But somewhere along the way, that spark faded. Maybe it happened quietly, buried under bills, deadlines, and adult responsibilities. Or maybe it was stolen by the idea that curiosity is for children, and grown-ups should already know. Psychologists call this the curiosity fade. Studies from the University of California show that as people age, especially after 50, curiosity often declines not because the brain stops learning, but because it starts filtering. The brain becomes efficient, almost too efficient. It says, "I've seen this before," and shuts the door to novelty. That's why sunsets look less magical, and conversations start to sound predictable. But here's the twist: your brain isn't broken. It's just conserving energy. Neuroscientists at Harvard found that the part of the brain responsible for curiosity, the hippocampus, still lights up like a child's when it encounters something genuinely new or emotionally rich. The trick is to let it. Think of it like this: curiosity is a muscle, and you've simply stopped flexing it. Every time you ask why, even about small things like why your cat chooses the one chair you never use, you're doing mental push-ups. The more you ask, the stronger that muscle grows. And you know what's funny? People who live with curiosity actually live longer. A 10-year study in the journal Psychology and Aging found that older adults who maintain a strong sense of wonder have better memory, emotional resilience, and even immune function. In other words, staying curious keeps you alive, in every sense of the word. So, if you've been feeling like every day looks the same, it's not because life got dull. It's because you stopped looking closely. The spark is still there, just hidden under layers of habit, comfort, and knowing too much. All it takes is one new question, one tiny "I wonder," to find it again. The adult filter. Here's something strange about growing up: the smarter you get, the less you actually see. Somewhere between wow and whatever, your brain builds what scientists call an efficiency filter. It's meant to help you survive, but it also quietly kills your sense of wonder. Think about it: when you were 5, a butterfly landing on your hand was pure magic. Now, it's just a bug. The difference isn't the butterfly. It's the filter. As adults, we've trained our brains to skip over familiar details because they seem irrelevant. The grocery store clerk, the morning light through the window, the smell of toast, all background noise to a mind constantly scanning for what's useful. Neuroscientists at Princeton discovered that the adult brain processes about 90% less sensory novelty than a child's. It's not that the world has become less interesting, your filter just got stronger. That's great when you're driving in rush hour and need to ignore distractions. But it's terrible when you're trying to feel alive. You see, your brain assumes repetition equals safety. It says, "You've done this before, you'll be fine," and shuts down the alertness that once made life sparkle. The irony? That same filter that keeps you safe also keeps you numb. But here's the good news: filters can be hacked. Researchers at the University of Toronto found that deliberately focusing on one overlooked detail, like noticing the pattern of raindrops on a window or the rhythm of your breathing, can temporarily disarm this filter. The result? You feel a small jolt of wonder again. Try it tomorrow morning. When you pour your coffee, really listen to the sound of it. Don't multitask, don't rush. Just watch the steam twist into tiny spirals. That single moment of attention rewires your brain to see freshness in the familiar. But it's not about pretending life is new. It's about remembering that it still can be. The filter doesn't define you, it's just a setting. And like any setting, you can turn it off when you choose to feel alive again. The science of wonder. Here's a fun fact: your brain is basically a dopamine junkie. Every time you feel a spark of curiosity, that wait, what moment, your brain rewards you with a shot of dopamine, the same chemical that lights up when you fall in love, eat chocolate, or win the lottery. The difference? Curiosity gives you that hit without the crash. In a 2014 study at the University of California, researchers discovered something fascinating. When people are curious, their brains show increased activity in the caudate nucleus and hippocampus areas linked to motivation and memory. In simpler terms, when you're curious, you learn faster, remember longer, and even feel happier. That's why children seem tireless. Their brains are swimming in dopamine because everything feels new. Now imagine what happens when curiosity fades. The dopamine trickles down, the world flattens out, and suddenly you find yourself scrolling through your phone, not because you care, but because you're desperate for some spark of novelty. That's not laziness, that's your brain begging for wonder, but you can give it what it's asking for consciously. Neuroscientists call it self-directed curiosity. It means intentionally finding small mysteries to explore every day. Ask yourself questions you don't need the answers to. Like, why do some trees turn red while others go yellow and fall? Or what's the story behind that old photograph you keep in your drawer? These tiny acts trigger the same dopamine pathways that make kids excited to open a box of cereal just to see the toy inside. Except this time, the prize is clarity, connection, and calm. Even better, curiosity doesn't just light up the mind, it protects it. A 2020 study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that seniors who stay mentally curious show slower cognitive decline and higher emotional satisfaction. Translation: curiosity isn't a hobby, it's a form of brain hygiene. So the next time you feel stuck or dull, don't reach for caffeine or reach for a question. Because the more you wonder, the more alive you become. And maybe, just maybe, that's what your brain has been craving all along. Losing track of time. You know that feeling when time disappears? You start gardening, painting, or talking to an old friend, and suddenly 2 hours feel like 10 minutes. That's not magic, that's your brain entering a state called flow. And it's one of the most beautiful side effects of curiosity. When you're deeply engaged in something that challenges you just enough, not too hard, not too easy, your brain shuts off its inner clock. Psychologists at Stanford describe it as optimal experience, a zone where dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins dance together like an orchestra. In this state, you stop being aware of yourself, you just are. Children live in flow naturally. They lose track of time building sandcastles or chasing butterflies because they aren't thinking about outcomes, they're just exploring. Adults, on the other hand, are often too focused on results. You paint to finish the painting, not to enjoy the brush strokes. You read to get information, not to get lost in the words. The result? You rob yourself of the gift of timelessness, but here's the good news: you can bring that flow back. Studies from the University of Chicago show that people over 60 who regularly engage in flow activities like cooking new recipes, playing an instrument, or even solving puzzles report higher life satisfaction and lower stress levels. Their days feel fuller because their minds are present. Here's a small experiment. Tomorrow, pick one task and do it like you have nowhere else to be. Turn off the TV, silence your phone, and let yourself sink into the act, whether it's washing dishes, walking, or journaling. You'll notice something subtle: time slows down, but your mind speeds up in joy. It's not about productivity. It's about presence. When you lose track of time, you're not escaping life, you're meeting it. The trick, then, is simple: stop trying to manage every second, and start inhabiting it. Because the moments when you forget time are usually the ones when you're finally living it. The trap of knowing too much. There's a peculiar side effect of growing older: you start believing you've seen it all. You've heard the advice, learned the lessons, made the mistakes. Life begins to look like a rerun of a show you already know the ending to. And slowly, without noticing, your mind stops tuning in. This is what I call the curse of knowing too much. It sounds like wisdom, but it's really a quiet thief. Because when you already know, you stop looking. You stop asking. You stop feeling surprised. Psychologists have a term for this: cognitive closure, the tendency of the adult brain to prefer certainty over curiosity. It's a survival strategy. The brain says, "We've figured it out, no need to waste energy exploring." But the price is steep. It trades wonder for comfort, discovery for familiarity. A fascinating study from Yale University found that older adults who remain open to not knowing actually have more creative problem-solving skills than younger, more certain minds. In other words, humility, the willingness to admit you don't have all the answers, literally keeps your brain younger. You can test this easily. Next time someone disagrees with you, instead of proving your point, ask, "What makes you think that way?" Watch how your brain protests. At first, it hates uncertainty. But if you stay curious, something shifts. Your neurons start firing differently, and your mind, like an old house with a window reopened, lets in fresh air. The danger of knowing too much isn't that it makes you cynical. It's that it makes you predictable. You stop growing because everything becomes obvious. But obvious is the opposite of alive. Here's a small rebellion: admit you don't know. Ask questions you once thought were too simple. Like, what does this cloud look like? Or why does that song still make me cry? The moment you stop pretending to know everything, you give yourself permission to feel everything, because knowledge fills the mind, but curiosity awakens it. And if you want to feel time disappear again, to laugh, to wonder, to live, you must unlearn just enough to let life surprise you once more. Learning like a beginner again. Imagine this: you wake up tomorrow morning and decide, just for one day, to act like you know nothing. Not in a helpless way, but in a playful one. You'd look at your coffee as if you'd never tasted it before, walk down your street as if you'd just arrived in this neighborhood, listen to someone's story as if it were a movie unfolding in real time. That's what psychologists call beginner's mind. It's not a trick, it's a practice. In Zen philosophy, beginner's mind Shoshin means approaching life without preconceptions, no matter how experienced you are. Neuroscientists have found that when you approach something as new, your brain releases acetylcholine, a chemical that enhances learning and attention. Translation: curiosity literally wakes your brain up. One study from University College London showed that seniors who regularly exposed themselves to new routines, even small ones like brushing their teeth with the opposite hand or taking a different route home, demonstrated improved memory and mood. It's like shaking the dust off your neurons. You don't need to climb a mountain or learn to surf. Start smaller. Ask a grandchild to teach you something from their world: a slang word, a TikTok dance, a new app. You'll probably roll your eyes at first. But here's the secret: laughter and discomfort are signs that your brain is rewiring. You're breaking routine, and the reward is vitality. If that still feels intimidating, try what scientists call micro-learning curiosity. Spend 5 minutes a day learning something absurdly specific: how bees communicate through dance, why bread smells comforting, how astronauts sleep in space. You're not learning for utility, you're learning for aliveness. Remember this: the world hasn't gotten boring. You've just stopped meeting it like a beginner. And the beauty of being older is that you now have the freedom to explore without needing anyone's approval. You can wonder just for the joy of it. So tomorrow, approach life like a scientist, a poet, and a child all at once. Let surprise become your daily vitamin. Because curiosity doesn't just make you smarter, it makes you timeless. Stories of rediscovery. Let me tell you about a man named George. He's 74, a retired postman from Ontario, who once told me that after retirement, his days felt like copy-paste. "I'd wake up, drink coffee, read the news, nap, repeat," he said. "I thought peace meant quiet, but it just felt like nothing." One morning, while clearing his garage, he found an old telescope his son had bought decades ago. That night, for the first time in years, he pointed it at the moon and he wept. "It was the same moon I'd always seen," he said, "but this time, I actually looked." George didn't become an astronomer. But that one act, looking through a lens with childlike, reopened something in him. He started journaling, learning constellations, and even teaching local kids about stars. His doctor noticed his blood pressure improved, his sleep got better, and his eyes had that spark again. Science backs that up. A 2021 study in translational psychiatry found that older adults who engage in activities that inspire awe show reduced inflammation and better cardiovascular health. Then there's Miriam, 68, who began painting after her husband passed. She didn't know how to paint, she just bought brushes, spilled colors everywhere, and laughed at her messy canvases. But within months, her living room walls turned into a gallery of rediscovery. "I realized," she said, "I wasn't grieving his death anymore, I was celebrating my life." And maybe you've seen people like them, neighbors who start gardening after 50, volunteering, learning guitar, or simply taking long walks again. They're not reinventing themselves. They're returning to the part of them that never got old, the curious one. The point isn't the telescope, or the paintbrush, or the garden. It's what they represent: permission. Permission to still explore, to still laugh at mistakes, to still feel wonder at something as simple as light on water. If you ever think it's too late to rediscover joy, remember this: curiosity doesn't care about age. It only cares about attention. And the moment you give your attention to something that stirs you, even for a second, you're already back on your way home to yourself. The timeless mindset. Here's the quiet truth no one tells you about getting older: it's not time that makes you feel old. It's repetition. When every day looks like the last, your brain loses its sense of aliveness. But when you rediscover curiosity, even in small doses, time stops being an enemy. It becomes something softer, more fluid. You stop counting days and start living them. Curiosity, in many ways, is a kind of time travel. It takes you back to the state of mind you had as a child, when you didn't worry about how fast the years were going, because you were too busy experiencing them. Neurologically, that's true. When your brain encounters novelty, it creates more detailed memories, which makes time feel longer and fuller. That's why childhood summers felt endless, every day was new. Adults compress time not because it passes faster, but because they stop noticing. So, how do you reclaim that timelessness? You practice wonder as a discipline. You walk a different route. You ask someone a question you've never asked before. You sit outside and watch the sky change for 10 minutes without a purpose. You let boredom turn into observation, and observation into awe. Scientists at the University of British Columbia found that even 2 minutes of daily awe reflection, intentionally noticing something vast, beautiful, or mysterious, increases life satisfaction and reduces anxiety in older adults. Just 2 minutes. That's less time than your morning coffee. You see, curiosity isn't about chasing excitement, it's about choosing attention. The more you notice, the more alive the world becomes. And the more alive the world becomes, the younger you feel, not in years, but in wonder. So maybe the real secret to staying young isn't fighting age at all. It's surrendering, not to time, but to timelessness. It's saying, I may be older, but I still have questions. And maybe that's what keeps your heart learning, your mind dancing, and your spirit wide awake, because curiosity doesn't just make you lose track of time, it makes you forget what too late ever meant.